The world of fashion is also celebrating a new season, only it had to fashion some new ways of doing it, as Alina Cho shows us.
Oh, lover, I've seen you lost.
Not even a pandemic could stop New York Fashion Week. It did look different. This past week, the shows went on without the typical fanfare and with far fewer fans. Perhaps the biggest change came from some of the biggest designers, foregoing Fashion Week altogether.
We wanted to be respectful with what's happening with everything around us.
It isn't that designer Tory Burch and her team aren't working.
A different shape, so it's not the same.
But in March, the chief creative officer of her namesake brand shut down her office and 300 stores worldwide.
Quite honestly, we were fighting for every bit of business that we could get.
As the U.S. went on lockdown, clothing store sales plunged a record 79%. Retailers struggled to survive. Some didn't. With work from home the norm for many, pajama sales spiked 133%, slippers 75%, hello sweatpants, goodbye jeans.
Why would anyone want to buy a dress right now?
Our sport collection is performing really well, but so are our dresses, and people want to go and they want to feel that joy and optimism.
Of course, during a pandemic, fashion may not seem like a priority to some. It's actually a $400 billion a year industry, and one Burch says is too big to fail.
You got on the phone with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. What was your pitch?
We need to save American jobs, and the fashion industry is close to 4 million jobs that were at risk, and we weren't being talked about like the airline industry. We needed to be addressed.
In the Depression, we saw a lot of people who couldn't afford to buy a new dress, and a lot of dressmakers went out of business. We may see something of the same thing now.
Valerie Steele, museum director at the Fashion Institute of Technology, says some of the best fashion has come out of tough times.
There was a lot of creative fashion that emerged in 1918, 1919 after the flu epidemic.
Like the fun flapper dresses of the Roaring '20s and Christian Dior's iconic New Look, that cinched waist silhouette that became popular after World War II.
It wasn't really that new, but it had all been put on ice. And so people were just so excited about looking beautiful and feminine and romantic again.
What does the future of fashion look like to you?
Fashion will survive. The idea of dressing up, of making yourself look special, seems to be hardwired into human beings. That's the good news. The bad news is that it's going to be tough.
It's already been tough. One of the nation's oldest department stores, Lord & Taylor, announced it's closing all stores. At least 15 major apparel companies have filed for bankruptcy, including JCPenney, Brooks Brothers, and Neiman Marcus, a direct competitor to Saks Fifth Avenue.
What's taken a hit during this period?
The evening gowns, anything you'd wear to a formal event.
Mark Metrick, president and CEO of Saks, temporarily closed all 40 of his stores. Now, he says, business is sound.
People are buying handbags.
Absolutely.
People are buying pumps.
Yeah.
What?
Yes. Can you imagine? We are the comfort food of fashion. We are the splurge.
So these come in,
And they go.
As other menswear brands are folding, men's at Saks is performing unexpectedly well.
It's a Zoom car world and it's a more casual world. You knew you made it when you had the suit with the tie and the hat. This is in the 60s. Uniformity meant success. Now it's the opposite.
When I was talking to buyers, they're like, anything without a fitted waist is doing well.
The pandemic has prompted a homecoming of sorts for Tracy Reese and her sustainable brand, Hope for Flowers.
I'm questioning every piece, like, would I wear this? Will my customer have a use for this?
In March, the veteran designer closed up shop in New York and moved back to her native Detroit. She now works from home.
It's been my plan for the past 2 years to make Detroit the home base for my business. and COVID really escalated those plans.
Another thing Reese hadn't planned on was a national reckoning on race, an issue that's deeply personal.
I was not the favorite of, certain fashion editors. It's more challenging to get financing. The list goes on and on.
Designer Aurora James is on the September cover of Vogue after challenging retailers to devote more shelf space to Black-owned businesses. The so-called 15% pledge went viral.
I think that Black vendors have historically been shut out of these opportunities. We're not stakeholders in this industry. This cannot just be a trend. And the fashion industry is notorious for cycling through trends.
Around the country, sales are slowly picking up pace as stores reopen, including Tory Burch.
How busy are the stores?
It's down. I mean, it's probably down 45%. But what's interesting is that conversion is up.
So what does that mean?
And they are shopping and they're buying more than ordinarily they would. Thank you. So a lot of this is really nostalgic and reminds me a lot of my parents. My dad used to wear a lot of pinstripe suits.
Burch and part of her team are back in the office, finishing up a new collection that will debut virtually this fall, inspired by and created entirely on lockdown.
Do you envision a day where maybe this becomes a little more of the norm?
I'm not sure who said it first, but you never waste a good crisis. I mean, there's so much darkness around with so many tough things. I think to have the ability to escape and dream is everything.